Todd Shapiro, what's up, man? Let's go into this at a minimum tragic case, at a maximum criminal case over in the UK when it comes to hockey. When you see this incident between Matt Petgrave and Adam Johnson sadly has died. When you see that incident, do you think it amounts to anything criminal?
First of all, Will, thanks for having me. I always enjoy being on with you and talking about issues and cases and the law. Do I think it was criminal? No, I don't. I think it was a tragic accident. I think it was within the field of play. Hockey is a dangerously brutal sport, very physical, as we know, involves a lot of body checking, hip checking, knee checking, a lot of intimidation. You know, I've slowed this video down and watched it multiple times, as I'm sure you have as well. Taking a step back even further, you know, we can look at all realm of sports and try to decide what would be considered criminal versus just part of the game, you know, whether it's bad taste or not. And you really have to take it to the full extent of gross negligence or recklessness or even intentionally or knowingly, you know, to say that should be criminal behavior as opposed to just a very bad accident of two people, you know, really getting after it. I think in this particular instance, it was a very, very tragic, obviously scene that the guy lost, you know, control of his leg and the skate was at just the perfect angle at the perfect moment at the perfect time to do what it did. I don't think there was ever any intent. Of course not, there was not any intent. The question is, was it reckless, you know, in his regard? I just don't see how you can bridge that gap. It just doesn't seem like that to me.
So let's talk about the law. You mentioned several terms, and every state's going to have their own law, and this took place in England, so there's going to be a different set of standards over there as well. But this is an example of the types of laws that exist in the United States, where they measure when something that happens within the course of a game has crossed over into a willing participant in the game into criminal conduct. This particular statute reads, any blow struck in anger or which is intended or likely to do bodily harm is criminal assault. A central issue is whether the degree of force used exceeds that which be anticipated by a player in consenting to participate to a sport. And now I want to read this from Newsweek. This is talking about perhaps applying it a little bit better over to the UK. Essentially, the position is that injuries caused in the course of an ordinary lawful sporting contest are within the bounds of ordinary conduct and hence do not give rise to liability, even when, for example, they contravene the rules of the game, amounting to a foul or violent conduct. However, extreme recklessness, a term that you just used, extreme recklessness, for example, wearing deliberately extra sharpened boots or something, or a deliberately inflicted injury of a serious kind, might fall outside the bounds of the exception of a willing participant if it leads to death. And he says, I'm this particular professor of criminal law at the London School of Economics, says, I'm not aware of anything of this nature that was involved in this case. So, Todd, you know, that sets the standard which you kind of set for us. It needs to be extreme, reckless, or intended for the result, in which case I don't think the result intended has to be death. It could just be assault that results in death. But that's happened in sports. We've seen the law pursue actions in sports outside of the realm of sports, in the realm of criminal justice. I mean, we've seen it in hockey.
That's correct. But I would think that's more along the lines of, you know, somebody taking it in a sport where a stick is involved, whether it's hockey or baseball, where, you know, the stick is intended to use to hit the puck or to hit a baseball. And instead, in a moment of rage or anger, sudden passion, that stick is now used as an assault weapon, right? Where we would see that out on the street, that could be considered a deadly weapon. There was nothing about this situation that skate was used in anger or in passion, or, hey, I'm going after this guy and my skate is now turning into a deadly weapon or a weapon that I'm intending to inflict some sort of physical harm. It was a moment that they were colliding in the course of action, the course of the game, wherein their bodies collided in such a way to inflict the obvious terrible, terrible death that took place. It was not as if he took his skate and slashed across the guy's face in anger. So that's where I see the distinction. An example that I was talking to somebody about earlier would be, I'm shocked at this point in the NFL, here at home, these guys have gotten so big, so strong, so fast that there hasn't been a collision that causes some sort of serious bodily injury or death on an NFL football field. That if a defensive back or a safety were to come in head first and hit a wide receiver at the right angle, that he wouldn't crush a windpipe, break a neck, cause somebody to die right there on the field, wherein, they're coming in and hitting somebody so hard. They didn't intend to do anything other than make a football play, but they came in at such an angle that, slow motion, slowing everything down frame by frame. You're like, oh, that's a wanton and willful act. I just don't see it unless it's very obvious.
So you brought up the stick. That's where the precedent lies in hockey. It's the most famous one, I think, is 2004, or rather 2000. It's the year 2000. It's McSorley and Brashear. Any sports fan that's roughly your and my age probably remembers that. Donald Brashear, Marty McSorley, hit him with a stick. And McSorley ended up in Canada getting 18 months probation on a conviction of assault. There's been others, sucker punched and that kind of thing, Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore, that went with civil liability. But let me ask you if these two things matter. Does Matt Petgrave's performance history impact at all whether or not you would look at potential criminal charges? So you're trying to put some intention into recklessness or assault. If he's, it's been stated he leads the league in penalty minutes, and 2 of the last 4 games he's been kicked out for, I guess, going after the refs or is it the umps or the refs in hockey? Forgive me, I only tune in once the playoff starts for the Stars. But going after the refs, would his history on the ice impact at all potential criminal charges?
I don't think so. If he's a goon, if he's an enforcer, if he's one of these guys, it always seems to be in some sort of penalty trouble. I don't think that can extrapolate into he's now a murderer or he should be held responsible for manslaughter. I just don't think in any scenario what happened was contemplated in the moment that let me use my, I'm gonna come after this guy and hopefully get my foot in the right position to really send a message to him with my skate. I don't think there was anything about that situation that you can read it to. And yes, intentions don't have to be stated, right? It's not as if he's got to say, here I come with my skate and I'm going to use it as a weapon. Intentions can be inferred from actions. And based upon what I've seen personally, I don't see anything in his actions that show intent.
Well, that's my second thing that I want to see if it impacted. When I look at the video, and I'm just trying to look at it dispassionately, and I made fun of myself a minute ago, but I have watched a decent amount of hockey, and then I've also read from other hockey players, that's not a natural movement. Like his leg coming up that high, it looked like a karate chop or karate kick. His leg and his skate was really high. And I don't know the situation where you would end up, it does, to be honest, just as a layman just looking, it does look like he's trying to kick the guy, to me. It looks like he's trying to kick the guy. That doesn't mean to me I think he's trying to kill the guy or that he's even trying to slice the guy, but it does look like to me an unnatural movement where he's trying to kick the guy. Does that not? I think I've heard you say several times it doesn't to you, but I imagine that's the whole calculus, right? Does it look natural?
I think it looks like he lost control of himself at the moment. It looks like somebody mentioned to me earlier. It looks like he may have lost control of that leg, and as he launched to try to collide, it looked like he was maybe trying to go knee to knee. I guess that's a common hockey move as well. It's a dirty one. It's not one that's condoned by most players, fans, or coaches, but it looked like he was maybe trying to take one leg at the other leg for a particular type of a body check, and then he simply lost control of that leg, and that's why it flew up so high in the air, along with the victim falling at a certain angle. I mean, again, the angles on this thing and the timing had to be so absolute and minute at the same moment for this to happen the way it did. It's almost like, two ships passing in the night. It's just impossible that it happened the way it did, except in that exact moment in time. And it's just so very unfortunate that it happened that way.
Well, the other incident that pops to my mind that backs up your conclusion that this isn't criminal is the one that I thought probably got the closest to criminality, which is I don't know if you remember this, Todd, but in 2014, Tony Stewart and Kevin Ward at a sprint car race in like upstate New York dirt track, they had an interaction on the track where I think Stewart had put Ward into the wall. He spun out. He was mad. Everybody else went under caution. Ward gets out of his car, starts walking down the track towards the oncoming cars, pointing and yelling, clearly targeting Tony Stewart. And Tony Stewart's car clips him and kills him. And the question then was, did Tony Stewart just intentionally kill Kevin Ward because they were both mad at each other? And ultimately, all law enforcement and prosecutors in New York came back with no, that didn't happen. And if that, to me, if it didn't, it just, to me, that illustrates the difficulty of finding criminal intent in sports.
I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, if that didn't do it, then certainly something within the field of play like this just doesn't meet the definition. I think what I read today was the police or law enforcement in England are have the case or investigating. I've read some accounts from some players that were on ice level and saw the players collide. I don't think anybody from that perspective had any other conclusion other than that it was an accident. I expect that law enforcement's going to come to the same conclusion. I would be surprised if they went in any other direction.
All right, Todd Shapiro, my buddy, excellent lawyer. Thank you as always, man.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Paul.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain Podcast for full episodes right now.